So I would love to introduce Vicki Segro. Vicki is an adult nurse practitioner with over 20 years of experience in movement disorders neurology. Since 2001, she has worked closely with individuals living with Parkinson's disease and related conditions. Her current role combines both clinical care and research, allowing her to spend half of her time supporting patients directly and half advancing the future of treatment through clinical research. And she is also a member of our medical advisory board, which is very helpful. So I'd like to introduce Vicki. So these slides is a really short slide set. And I am making an assumption that most of you understand basic medications for Parkinson's disease. Before I start, is there anybody that has any questions about just meds? Correct me.
Do you have to take them at the same time? Like I take the medication, how do you say it? Carbo?
Carbidopa?
Yeah. You take it, like, I can never say that, by the way.
I always call it the old brand name Cinnamon. It's a lot easier.
Yes. But I take it 3 times a day. Do you have to take it the same time every day, or because I forget sometimes and then an hour later I'm in.
Yeah. So I always say just do your best. When I first started, I was very militant with people about you must take your drug at these certain times a day, and you know there's life. So live your life, and if you miss a dose, if your body tells you you're late for it, then just take it then.
Just take it then. Yeah, because I was taking it like 9, 1, and 5, and then I would forget and go, oh my gosh, it's 2, 3 o'clock, and then I'd take the second dose, and then it'd be later that I'd take the third dose, and I didn't know if you had to be on a certain time.
And again, just do your best. Try to take it a little bit away from food, but leave it open because there can be some competition for absorption, particularly with protein.
Okay, so on an empty stomach mostly?
Try it. I mean,
Okay.
if there's problems in the provider, there's ways that we can get around nausea that.
Okay, because sometimes I take it after I've eaten, forgetting that, oh, I ate, so I'm gonna, but I forgot to take my pill, so I take it, so.
Yeah, and so if you, is that me? Yeah. If you miss a dose and you're at lunch and you're thinking, oh, I can't take my medicine right now, it's okay to go ahead and take it. It might just not work as well because it's with food, but I wouldn't, don't let it rule your life.
Okay. That I needed to know that, and yeah. Thank you very
And
much.
so early on in Parkinson's disease, people don't really notice wearing off. You can miss doses all the time. You even take meds once a day. Sometimes too, people will forget to take other medicines. As Parkinson's progresses, your body starts telling you you missed a dose, and it will remind you.
Okay,
So just I say don't let it ruin your life.
thank you.
So I actually was hired in movement disorders right before September 11th. It was at like Labor Day weekend, right before September 11th. So that's kind of, I always remember exactly when I started movement disorders. It was something I always thought I was going to work in cardiology or just internal medicine. And I say that neurology fell in my lap. So, and I've been here ever since. Kind of a, you know, want to stay in the same thing. I don't like to bounce around. So I'm an old sage in the office right now. Okay. Well,
Do you want me to advance it for you?
Don't panic.
okay, so I'm just gonna be in the middle of you guys. Let's see if we can. Yeah. This week, electronics have not been my friend. My printer went offline and it must have been offline all week. I've had to print like down the hall.
Mhm. Okay,
I can just push buttons.
I'm wondering,
Hopefully.
there you go. Yeah, just step her down.
So first of all, when we diagnose people with Parkinson's disease, you have to figure out like, what are our goals of treatment? Just because somebody's diagnosed doesn't mean they have to take medicines. And so we always, how are you functioning is the biggest question. And so there's actually, I put 2 goals up here, but there are actually 3 goals. One is, maybe I don't want to take any medicine right now. I'm doing fine. You don't have to take medicine. Other ideas that we think about, do you need symptomatic medicine to improve your symptoms? Lastly, what can we do to slow this down? And that may mean medications or clinical research trials. It also may mean just trying to get people active and exercise more, just because we think that exercise slows the progression of Parkinson. So, and again, why would we start levodopa or other medications that are symptomatic treatment? And everybody's life is different. So let's say I have a lot of stiffness and trouble with my right hand dexterity because I have right-sided symptoms. And you think about it, I'm working, let's say I work in IT and I need to be able to use a computer to keep up at work. So that person may elect for more aggressive symptomatic treatment because they need to stay working. Otherwise, going on disability isn't always the first idea that we have. So think about quality of life and also think about like safety. I sometimes will have people that come to my office who don't have a little bit of symptoms, they have a lot of symptoms. And so when we do a pullback test, checking people's balance, they may fall down. And that person, it's a safety issue to start medications. So, that you want your provider to be able to be honest with you if they think that you really need symptomatic treatment. But oftentimes it's this conversation between patient and the caregiver and the provider, what's best for the patient. And I'm real big on quality of life. So, you got to think about risks. How's this medication going to affect my quality of life? Is it going to improve it? Are the side effects too much? And so we got to individualize treatment. So the first part of this talk, I am going to talk about medications that are, or treatments that are in clinical research that are close to or sitting on the FDA's desk for approval. And so they name these drugs ridiculous names. And so it's Solengapras. And I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it. This is developed by Theravance Pharmaceuticals. We actually did the studies in this. And it is a once a day oral drug. It's not dopamine. And it works in this really weird, they call it the indirect pathway in the brain. And most neurologists can't remember the mechanism of action of the indirect pathway. And so what we think about it, it's kind of like you're driving with a foot on the brake and a foot on the gas. And there's like, you put the brake on, it slows movements, gas on it, it makes movements easier. So it works in this indirect pathway that's not dopamine. And so there were 2 trials. One was for monotherapy. In other words, people that had not been exposed to any kind of treatment for their Parkinson's. That's monotherapy. And then the ARISE study looked at people who were on levodopa who had wearing off, or what we call motor fluctuations in Parkinson's disease. And I actually just did an update. What they found was first of all, it was a well-tolerated medication with not a lot of side effects. And both in the newly diagnosed patients, as well as the people with wearing off or motor fluctuations, there was improvement in people's motor function.
So people could take this, they had early Parkinson's disease, who didn't need a lot of aggressive treatment as a once-a-day treatment for their Parkinson's. And also for people that were having wearing off, it helped with that. It also did help some of the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. We think about motor symptoms being things that you can see, like slowness, stiffness, tremor, trouble walking. And then there's non-motor symptoms, which would be things like mood, sleep, acting out your dreams. There's constipation, bladder issues, but this actually improved both slowness, stiffness, tremor, and also non-motor symptoms in both early and late. And I believe that this is sitting at the FDA's desk. Then there's another new medication. This is also very exciting. It's called tavapadon. And then this again is a once-a-day pill developed by AbbVie Pharmaceuticals to treat motor symptoms of Parkinson's. And have you all heard of dopamine agonists like ropinirole, the Nupro patch, Mirapex? Yeah.
What's it called
Pramipexole.
again?
The dopamine agonists,
Oh.
which are the way that the dopamine agonists work is they stimulate dopamine receptors, making receptors think it's dopamine when it's not. It's like a synthetic dopamine.
Oh,
And there's different types of dopamine receptors. And the conventional drugs that we have right now that are in that category tend to cause sleepiness, sleep attacks, like literally sudden onset of sleep. So, somebody could be just driving and then just fall asleep driving. And we've unfortunately seen that. Also, impulse control disorder is a problematic side effect of this drug, this category of drug. And so those tend to work on different dopamine receptors than this drug. And so they felt if they stimulate this D1, dopamine 1 receptor, and D5 receptors, then it you can get the benefit without those type of side effects. And so we did 2 studies, the Tempo 1 study and the Tempo 2. And so we did studies in early symptomatic Parkinson's. And then also we did one for people that had wearing off again. So it's good for early Parkinson's and then also later Parkinson's disease. And that was positive in both. So how many people see movement disorder specialists here?
How many what?
People see a specialist in movement disorders neurology. So there's a specific exam that we use called the Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale. And we give scores for things like ability to tap fingers, your walking, the grade of your tremor, the muscle stiffness. And so with these, you see improvement in those motor scores. And, you can say that out of, each item has its 0 to 4 points. And with these drugs, if you have like a 3-point improvement, that's a really good improvement in one task. And so they have to prove that they have enough benefit to warrant FDA approval. And so these are very promising and are sitting at the FDA's desk, and we'll see when they can get their act together and approve their drugs.
Vicki, could you explain the difference between a neurologist and a movement disorder
Yeah.
specialist?
So general neurologists have to know about all of neurology. So they have to know about stroke, migraine headaches. They have to know about back pain, any reason that you go see a neurologist, including Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, ALS, just all kinds of stuff. And so the way I think about a general neurologist is they have to know a lot of different things. So their knowledge is a mile wide and enough to be safe practicing. And so I'd say a mile wide and an inch deep of knowledge. And so with movement disorder specialist really, really hones in on a specific part of neurology, different types of movement disorders. So our knowledge is an inch wide and a mile deep. Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah.
Movement disorder specialists also have to be general neurologists before they can go and become a movement disorder specialist. There's a lot more schooling involved. So the Tempo 3 study, I believe it's newer and that is ongoing. Tempo 1 and Tempo 2 studies in this are wrapped up. Then this one is kind of wild. This is a drug called prasinezumab, and I just completely didn't pronounce that correctly. But this is intravenous monoclonal antibody, and it is designed to take bad protein out of people with Parkinson's disease. So everybody has this protein called alpha-synuclein, and every protein has a structure. In Parkinson's disease, something happens to this protein and then it changes the structure, and then it kind of clumps up and gets clogged in neurons, and then ends up kind of causing symptoms. And also, as the bad protein is spread from nerve to nerve, neuron to neuron, then you have progression of Parkinson's disease. And so this drug is an anti-alpha-synuclein antibody. So it's developed to scoop up bad protein and take it out. And so they think that if we can scoop up the bad protein and get rid of it, then we can slow the progression of Parkinson's disease, essentially. And so we actually participated in this. This is a once a month intravenous infusion. We studied it in people that were drug naive, so as monotherapy in people with Parkinson's, and then also as an add-on treatment. And when you look at slowing the progression of Parkinson's is kind of a slowly progressive neurologic disorder. So you have to watch people over a long time. And with this treatment, they found that there were some positive signals. And so they have decided to continue and continue and continue. And we've had people that have been in this study between 5 and 6 years now. And so it's positive enough that they're continuing to study. And so with prasinezumab, it's they saw positive signals, which makes it so they wanted to continue development of this drug. But when they look at in clinical studies, you have to have a clinically significant improvement in symptoms. So this was positive, but it wasn't completely clinically significant as far as the statistical analysis. But they felt that it's positive enough to continue development of this drug. And so we've started a new study. And this is for people who have Parkinson's disease, this is a unique study. It's called the Pariso study. And they are allowing some people with deep brain stimulation surgery to enter the study. And historically, if people have DBS, they don't get to do any participation in any studies. That's usually exclusionary. So this is interesting. And so we're enrolling for the Pariso study right now. And hopefully
At your clinic you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I work at a private practice, and also we have a clinical research. So there's 2 different companies. So it's Senexcel, Colorado,
Okay.
which is
It's where?
the company is called, that does the clinical research that I work with, is called Senexcel, Colorado.
Oh.
Cenexel. So this is very exciting, in that we're continuing to study. I mean, there's enough positive. These people, they come for their monthly IV infusions, bring their work, they're working on their computer, sitting and looking at the mountains from a complete different perspective than here, but really exciting. So it's very exciting because they've looked at many, many, many drugs over the years to slow the disease progression. None of them have panned out. And this one, we're getting positive signals, so, very
And then it
nice.
says early.
Yeah, early Parkinson's, you can be on treatment. I think you have to be within 3 years of your diagnosis. But then they also have the deep brain stimulation.
So all these possibilities, if you've had DBS, they say a lot of times you can't do certain,
Yeah, a lot of sponsors do not want to put people that have had deep brain stimulation into their studies.
into
Just
the
because it's after DBS, people's response to medications is way different than previous to. So it adds too many factors in.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, with DBS, pharmacologic treatment's way different. So.
Yeah.
All right, and then we can get genetic profiles of people with Parkinson's disease. They've identified several, I think about 25 plus genes that are associated with Parkinson's disease. And so now they're looking at gene-specific therapies for people that carry a certain genetic variant. And we try to encourage, particularly if people have any other family members with Parkinson's disease, to get genetic testing. So to identify if they carry a gene, because they may be able to participate in gene-specific treatment for their Parkinson's. And so there's a GBA mutation, which is pretty common as far as like people with a genetic variation that we can identify. That is one of the more common. And there's 2 studies through bio and then gain therapies. Biotherapy has just completed and we're awaiting the top line data on that. So this is something hopefully by the end of the year, we will get the data on how, if there was any ability to slow progression in people with the GBA mutation. And then the gain therapeutics is they're just starting their treatment. And then we have the LRRK2 or the LARC mutation that we actually participate in this study. And it's looking for people with a specific LRRK2 genetic mutation. But in this study, they also opened it up to people that didn't have that genetic variation. So unfortunately, the people that participated, this did not meet clinical endpoints. So there's the people that did not have the genetic mutation that participated in the study, and then there's people with the LRRK2 mutation. And the company has decided to continue research in people that just have that LRRK2 variation, and that it didn't meet clinical endpoint for people without that mutation. So it's kind of neat because in cancer, there's gene-specific therapies for cancers now. So they, in breast cancer, they do the genetic analysis of tumors. And so it's very targeted treatment. And to think that they're actually able to think like that and do targeted treatment for people with genetic variations of Parkinson's, that we can do that. I personally think that there's a lot of genetic mutations that we haven't identified. So that's, again, in research, there will be a lot more genes. And there's probably a combination of genes also that are affecting. And so this study, the Regenerate Parkinson's study, is pretty wild. And it's sponsored by this company called Ask Bio. And it's an early phase 2 study. And it's an investigational treatment. And what they do is they're delivering glial nerve neurotraffic factors into brains of people with Parkinson's disease. And they package it up in a little viral vector. And so this is a surgical study where they implant GDNF via a viral vector into brains of people with Parkinson's. And so the early phase 1 study on just 11 patients was, when they do phase 1 studies, they always look at, is it tolerable? Is it safe? So that's why they only do it on a handful of patients. But there was really no significant adverse events in those patients. And so they're continuing phase 2 studies. And so we actually have 2 people that are ready for their surgery, which is very exciting. And when you do these phase 1 studies and you only have a handful of patients, you don't know what's it going to be like when we open it up to hundreds of patients. And so you can't really look at how people responded. This 11 people responded to this treatment. You have to look at hundreds of people. So now we're opening it up to other people.
Describe the thing they put in your brain. Is it a pill? Is it a?
So it's like an empty shell of a virus that they have the nerve growth factor inside.
So it's a
And so-
teeny thing.
It is, but it's brain surgery,
Yeah.
so they actually, put a tube in your brain and they release the treatment inside the brain. It's a very long surgery, but it is something for people that, if this might slow and repair and, turn back time with Parkinson's, this may be useful. So they've done GDNF studies in the past that did not pan out, but so far this is looking positive, although you have to remember this is just a handful of patients, but very exciting future. I don't know if anybody's heard about semaglutide and how everybody in the world should be on this drug. So this is kind of almost too good to be true, but it's a peptide-based therapy, a GLP-1 receptor antagonist, or excuse me, agonist. And this I copied from the computer, and I don't know why it wrapped like that, but it's looks at mitochondrial targeted compounds and neurotrophic factors. And it basically, what they wanted, they think that this might slow the progression of Parkinson's disease. And they're also looking at it in other neurodegenerative diseases. But this is very interesting. There's a couple other, there's different GLP-1 agonists that they've looked at, and they've had positive studies for slowing the disease progression. They've had negative. Then there's another one, positive and negative. And so it's really mixed results. There's nothing that's perfect that looks great for, repetition of the same study in a new group of people. But there's a lot of excitement about this drug, and we're going to continue studying it. And they think that it also, it helps with aggregation of that bad protein, and also it helps with inflammation in the brain that they think drives disease progression. So if we can slow down inflammation or protein aggregation, then we can slow down the progression.
I think it's interesting that all these studies, they talk about slowing progression, and yet it's only available to people who are newly diagnosed
Yeah.
or
That's true.
not on Cinnamon, have not had GBS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they when they do clinical studies, they try to pick populations that are very similar, people that are very similar. So I wish that they open it up to more people.
They have far more participants.
Oh, we
If they
certainly would.
If they would go with
Yeah.
people who have had these,
Yeah.
had it for a while.
And I think a lot of these drugs, if it's really positive in this one group consistently, let's say, you look at exenatide, one of the GLP-1 agonists, if it was like positive, 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 then they're going to take it and they're going to say, oh, let's look at people that have had Parkinson's longer and see how it does with
I
them.
never hear about that happening.
Well, that's because a lot of the development will stop because they don't get a real positive signal with the first one. Unfortunately, with clinical studies, if they have a molecule, a very, very, very small percent show any promise even to continue development. And I've been doing clinical research for way too many years, and they've stopped clinical development on a lot of treatments.
Hmm.
And so those little ones that get through, like the Padova study, the monoclonal antibody, that's really exciting because that's showing positivity, and then they can start opening it up like they did to people with DBS and people that have more advanced disease. So research is expensive and kind of crazy. So this is, I don't even want to try to pronounce this word, Bemdanis Purcell. So this is actually a stem cell treatment. And it's from human pluripotent stem cells that's surgically implanted into the brain. I don't know if you all have heard some of the stem cell studies that are continuing to go. And stem cells are precursor cells that are intended to integrate into the cells around them and become new dopamine cells and then reconnect circuits and kind of, turn back time. They did have a phase 1 study that's been published. And so basically they showed that the transplanted cells survived, and then they started to kind of work into the other cells around them. And there was some positive motor, as far as slowness to and stiffness and tremor results. But it was only on a handful of patients, and those early phase are not looking for efficacy, they're looking at safety. And so they found that it was safe, but brain surgery, it requires brain surgery, so it's kind of an aggressive treatment. And when you implant cells in the body, you have to take immune treatment to prevent rejection. And there is a risk of dyskinesia. If you ever know about the old fetal cell transplants that they did, actually, Dr. Freed at University Hospital was one of the big people that went into this whole part of
He was my
Parkinson.
He was my doctor for one of the trials.
Yeah. He did a few different studies. But what we found is they implanted fetal cells into brains, and those cells, they had a couple of people that had it many years ago who passed away, and they donated their brains, and they looked at those cells and found that those fetal cells, even though they were like teenagers, they were maybe 13, 10 years old, that they also had Parkinson's disease. So there's, risk of that, the environment around the cells might, because there's Parkinson's around, it might kind of pick up in the brand new cells. There were a couple of people that had like wild dyskinesia because of these cells. And also there's always a risk that the cells don't turn into what they're supposed to. So they could become like a tumor or other type of cell. So very aggressive treatment. I think there's still a lot of promise. I have a lot of patients that get very excited and ask about stem cells. The one thing that you have to be careful, there are people that will give you stem cells, I'm putting that in air quotes, that maybe aren't very moral people. And so I've had people that have been victimized over the years that go to Tijuana and get like an intravenous shot, and it's, $40,000 or something. And then you don't know, did they just get saline? Did they get just blood products? And we know that it's hard to get stem cells from your veins into your brain. So that's why if you're going to do stem cells, you need to do a clinical trial with good science behind it. Otherwise, you'll get victimized.
Surgeries on the brain that go single location, brainstem, gland.
But the different types of treatments will have different targets. Yeah, they're usually deep in the brain, but there are different targets.
When we were at this convention, there was a nice drug rep that was saying that they would take skin cells and turn them into stem cells, and I left because that sounded sounded hokey. That sounded like that couldn't really work.
Well, I believe that when they first started looking at pluripotent stem cells, I know that in California, they were, I believe, deriving them from skin cells.
Yeah. So you think that actually is possible?
It is possible. It's just really complex. And before you would enter any study, you would need to know all the risks. You know, what's happened to, you know, it's been when you do studies, they have consents and they have to say, well, you know, 35 people have been implanted with this. And here's what we found. I mean, they have to reveal that to you to participate in any study. Okay, and then I thought I'd just like shift over to stuff that's like new. What's new in treatment that we've had in the last year or two? And so the first is subcutaneous pumps called Violev. Are you
That's her.
using that? Yeah, it's pretty wild. So there's carbidopa, levodopa, the medication, Cinemet. And then to put it into liquid, they had to phosphorylate it, so it's called carbidopa, phoslevodopa. It's a subcutaneous pump. It's 24-hour treatment, and it's used for people that have wearing off between doses. Insurance won't pay for it unless you have like 2.5 hours of wearing off. Of meds not working during the day. We have to document that, or that insurance will just say no. And so as Parkinson's advances, well, first of all, we know that the gut also has Parkinson's, right? So there's delayed gastric emptying, and as Parkinson's advances, that becomes more pronounced. So people will have, number one, wearing off. They'll also have, so they take their medicine and it just doesn't start working for a while. So maybe it used to kick in 15 minutes and now it takes 2 hours for it to kick in. Or sometimes maybe you take a dose and it just doesn't work. That's called a failed dose. And so if we bypass the stomach, then we don't have to worry about that part. And so this is a subcutaneous pump that just is absorbed directly into your blood from under your skin. And so for people with really bad wearing off or bad motor fluctuations, this can be a total life changer, a real life changer. We actually did the studies, and also we have a lot of people in our clinic that are on the treatment that have had several hours of meds not working. And like when my meds don't work, then it's really hard to walk. And this has given people's life back. They can eat whatever they want, and it doesn't affect the absorption because it's already goes straight into the blood. Then there's another one, a NOPCO. So this is called an apomorphine pump. This actually has been in Europe for 20 years before we got it to us. And this is a continuous infusion. It's not levodopa. It's a dopamine agonist called apomorphine that is, again, in a subcutaneous pump. You use it through about 16 hours a day, and then you take it off at night. And again, this is for treating wearing off. The big difference between this drug and then the Violev replaces all of your levodopa that you're taking, your oral levodopa. This is basically an add-on to prevent wearing off. And again, these are both good treatments for unpredictable wearing off. Apomorphine, which is not morphine, it's actually dopamine agonist. I don't know why they called it that. It can cause sleepiness. And so we've had people that develop sleepiness on it. And also the blood pressure is dropping. That's a potential side effect. So all of the subcutaneous pumps, because it's your skin and you break the integrity of the skin, can cause skin infections and sometimes nodules. So you have to be really careful about hygiene before you would start treatment like this. But again, these are treatments that can really improve people's quality of life if they have a lot of wearing off between doses. And we've seen really good results with both of them. And then recently, is anybody here taking the drug called Crexont? So that is carbidopa, levodopa, just like Cinemet that we take, and it's in a high-tech formulation. It's in a capsule and there's little beads inside the capsule with the same drug that you're taking, carbidopa, levodopa, but it's in beads of different sizes. And also there's a little coating on the outside that basically it makes it so you have a longer action. So you usually works about 5-6 hours as opposed to, some people with Cinemet have to take it every 2 to 3 hours. But this can really improve wearing off and again, improve people's quality of life instead of, here I'm taking medicine every 3 hours and I have to take it in the night because it wears off in the night. And with a longer acting agent with a real predictable absorption and mechanism of action, then you can get some of that time back rather than having to dose every 3 hours. Maybe I have to dose every, 6.
Yeah, that sounds,
Yeah.
that's to me so far.
Yeah. The first person that we again did the clinical studies. The study itself was really difficult for people because they were taking, it was double blind, double dummy. So they had to take either real or placebo Cinemet and then real or placebo of this drug. And so they were taking like pills all over the place. So it was difficult to complete the study for some people. But this, we've really been able to smooth out people's response and make it so they don't have to take meds as frequent. There is a dose adjustment. So we guess, well, we don't guess, there's a dosage calculator to figure out what's the conversion. And there's usually some adjustment. So sometimes we'll overshoot or undershoot, but once we get people at the right dose, it's great. Yeah.
You know how Cinemet is 25/100?
Mhm.
Is Crexon different than that?
It's the same proportion. It's essentially 25/100. The numbers are all totally weirdly different
Okay.
because of the beads inside,
Yeah.
but it's the same proportion. Yeah, this is actually, we're converting a lot of people that have wearing off. This is now our first go-to treatment when people start developing wearing off, because we're not changing what they're exposed to. We're just changing the way it's delivered. It's a really good treatment. And then as far as deep brain stimulation, so when I started working in movement disorders in the olden days, basically when you give DBS, you come into the office and then they set stimulation parameters, which is like a continuous static stimulation parameter, that sometimes you end up with side effects. There's a lot of issues with the way that we used to program it. Old DBS did really improve people's quality of life, but they found out there were problems with some people. It's like some people develop, based upon like overstimulation of certain areas, you can, cause problems like freezing, worsening of freezing, or speech problems. But now they have developed deep brain stimulation that kind of adjusts to what your brain needs. Weird. So stress, medications, your level of activity changes the requirements for stimulation in your brain. And now with adaptive deep brain stimulation, it can listen and adjust based upon the signal in your brain. So it's pretty neat. I mean, we've had people that maybe had some side effects, and then when they get their battery replaced, they change it to an adaptive battery, and then we're able to improve their programming.
Would that work with any of the devices?
This is primarily Medtronic devices, but the other companies also are developing ways to do adaptive DBS. But this is really nice. Really nice. Again, brain surgery, kind of, not like taking one pill a day. But in people with more advanced disease, that can be really helpful. And also we are, like Jody was talking about, we're not so strict about people as far as candidacy for surgery. So we're doing DBS earlier than we have in the past. That was always a big giant discussion at
Yeah.
conferences. Like, shouldn't you, exhaust everything before you like do brain surgery on somebody? And some neurologists still feel like that, and some say, hey, why not just improve quality of life earlier? So, and we're finding it's positive. Focused ultrasound. Has anyone heard about focused ultrasound treatment?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a new hot topic. So it has been recently, it's been around for a few years in people with essential tremor, which has been really helpful. But it's been recently approved for Parkinson's, and it works better with people with very tremor predominant Parkinson. And so it's called a non-invasive surgery, which is kind of a funny idea to me. They don't do a burr hole. They don't stick electrodes in your brain, but they have focused ultrasound waves that pinpoint a target, and they heat up a target, which basically kills off cells, aberrant cells. And I still think it's an invasive treatment because we're, tickling your brain cells. But it doesn't have an incision, it doesn't have burr holes and that kind of stuff. So there's no implanted hardware, but it is not adjustable. So, you do a treatment and then you have to, just kind of leave it. After these type of treatments, there is swelling that occurs. And then after a period of time, the swelling goes down and people might have symptom reemergence. So then they can go back and do it again. They do one side at a time, and they usually wait about 6 months between each side. But here we go. We got a new treatment that's not implanting hardware that can cause infection and things like that. All right, so that's what's upcoming. So does anyone have any questions about anything? You could just throw anything at me.
And that was a lot.
That's a lot. So the whole thing is with research, there's a lot of hope. And like I said, when they develop these little molecules, they think, well, this is going to, be the next new thing for treatment of, say, Alzheimer's disease. And then there's all kinds of phases. And you start out with the lab, and then you go into little mice, and then you go into people. Handful of people will be phase 1, and wider populations. So it takes several years to develop a new treatment for Parkinson's and other disorders. And not everything pans out. There's a lot of things that they stop development on because it just doesn't look like it's working, or maybe there's side effects.
I've heard that they are talking about repurposing drugs for IBS or Parkinson's.
Yeah.
It's just because clearing up the gut will make you feel better, or what do you think?
Well, there's a whole gut microbiome that is a huge opening up area in neuroscience and all different things, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, it's insane. So there's a lot of studies going on. I think it's a great idea. I've seen some kind of interesting lab animal studies on Alzheimer's that were very positive. But again, keep looking, it's many years.
Are there any studies for people who have had Parkinson's for a while or have DBS?
Right now, the ones that have also had DBS would be just the one that I was telling you about. But we do have a lot of studies for people with more advanced Parkinson's disease, and those are usually for wearing off for people that have motor fluctuations and or dyskinesia. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Behind the scenes. And it's really exciting when we see something that actually is positive that comes through, and, the Pressant or, Noriance is one that was, I was involved in those studies when I first started back in 2001. with his definite areas, so kind of fun. So gives us hope for the future.
When did you guys see Dr. Kumar? No,
I'm sorry, say that again?
just, I was wondering if anyone saw Dr. Kumar.
I don't know, I don't.
So Dr. Kumar, I mean, he hired me back in 2001 and, developed this big program, and then he's decided to go off and go into deep end clinical research. He is doing, he's opened up a pharmaceutical company essentially.
Really?
So he's left clinical research and, Dr. Megan Salinas has brought her practice, about a year ago. And, so we're still continuing it and just having fun with it.
Well, thank you for the open.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.